Welcome back, everyone. We're going into lesson 4 and seeing what I did wrong this time. Probably not a whole lot. It hasn't really been that bad yet. I haven't seen this video in almost 5 years. Let's go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the ToKini and Genki 1 lesson 4 live stream. So let's get started with lesson 4. This is a long one. Today we're covering 8 different sections. Some of them are harder than others. Some of them are going to be reviewing stuff from last week. Kohi ga arimasu. I have coffee. Same sentence, but depending on the context, it could also mean that there is coffee. Literally, if we were to translate this, it would just be coffee exists. In either situation, it would just be that contextually, that might mean that coffee exists in my hand or coffee exists in the cabinet. Like, it doesn't make much of a difference. The next sentence uses imasu. It's Ando-san ga imasu. There is Ando-san, or Ando-san is here, or something like that. Like if Ando-san was over there, I'd be like, Ando-san ga imasu. The literal translation for this is Ando-san exists. I think one thing that would have been good for me to explain here, all these sentences are fine and I haven't done anything wrong here. I think something that just would have been sort of useful for the listener is that we're using the ga particle here. And Genki doesn't really explain the ga particle a whole lot up until this point, but the ga particle marks the subject in a sentence. And the subject in each of these sentences is respectively coffee, work, or Ando-san. The subject exists in a place. And that's all that is happening here. The ga is marking the thing that exists in some place. What do you guys have to drink? What do you have to drink? And I'd be like, boku wa kohi ga arimasu. So I have coffee. I had my gain turned up way too high in that mic. Keeps cutting out. Sorry about that, guys. So boku wa kohi ga arimasu is I have coffee. Whereas if it's over there, asoko ni kohi ga arimasu. The reason that boku wa kohi ga arimasu is different from asoko ni, and you notice the particle difference there. Why they're different is that the ni is obviously marking the target location where the coffee exists. Boku wa is marking me as the topic. I'm the topic. We're going to talk about me. What about me? I have coffee. Now, asoko ni is location, target, location over there. Coffee exists. So the ni and the wa actually make it a little bit easier to figure out what this might mean. Unfortunately, or I'm sad to say, tomorrow I have work. Zannen nagara. It's like unfortunately. Very useful phrase. Definitely not N5, I don't think. But yeah, zannen nagara. Zannen is just like regrettable or regrettably, unfortunately. And then the nagara just means while. So while I'm unfortunately or while I'm disappointed, tomorrow work there is a continuing story. It will continue on until they're all connected. Usually they're completely separate little stories, but this one is a story about, well, Ando-san. This is fun. This is where I was finally able to start like really writing stories, basically. Someone asked me a question recently. They said, when did you feel like you could start expressing yourself more fully when going through these Genki lessons and writing, like, for example, the immersion content on ToKiniAndy.com. So this was a question for both me and Yuki. And both Yuki and I said around lesson 7, we felt like we were able to express ideas more fully. But I guess looking back at this, I was actually starting to be able to write continuing stories, like over multiple sections, using just stuff up to lesson 4. So pretty neat. Like, you don't even have to get that far and you can start sort of expressing ideas a little bit more fully. So we know that I'm asking, well, what about the toilet? Did you check the toilet? That's what this little thing, just toire wa, implies. Interestingly, I got this right, despite maybe not having my grasp of wa versus ga completely down yet at this point. If we were just to see this sentence, like you as a learner, just seeing the sentence the first time might not know perfectly that we're talking about maybe Ando-san's in the toilet. But the usage of the wa particle here is indeed doing that. It's making the toilet the new topic of discussion. It's bringing that up of like, what about, or how about the toilet? From context here, we can see that like, why would they be bringing up the toilet if it wasn't having something to do with Ando-san? So obviously they mean, is he in the toilet? Imasen deshita. He was not there. Skipping ahead to other sections again. I guess this was just a theme for me throughout this. If I were to go back, I wouldn't do that, but it is what it is. Do you have beer? People ask me a lot. Is beer really that common in day-to-day life in Japan? It's not that common in my day-to-day life anymore, but yes, it is a very common thing. A lot of people will have a beer or two after work every single day. It used to be a topic in a lot of my lessons, not because I drank a whole lot of beer all the time. I didn't. But it was because of the character Ando-san, who hasn't been showing up in my videos that much lately. But back then, he was such like a focal point of this channel, and his favorite thing was beer. So people going back now like are a little bit confused. Like, why are you always talking about beer? It's directional doko, where, a directional or a place word doko ni arimasu ka? Toire wa doko ni arimasu ka would be another very common sentence you would use in this situation. I got a little lost for words there. Doko is just a word that means where. It just means where, and ni marks that as the target. Where is the target of exists? Where does it exist? And it's true. X is before or in front of Y. If you were to look at a chart of the English alphabet, you would see that X wa Y no mai desu. X is before Y. Did you need that explanation? Did that explanation of the alphabetic chart help you? Let me know in the comments. Y no mai de kohi wo nomimasu. Mae. If you want to learn more about to, stick around for that, but just know in the construction of the Aida construction, that's how you mention what things something is between, X in particular. But I don't think I really explained that there, did I? Maybe I did. Okay, so Aida, the word Aida means between something, in between. X is the topic of the sentence, and that's the thing we're going to be explaining the location of, and the location where it exists is Y to Z. So Y and Z, no Aida, between. Between Y and Z. To means and. We'll get to that later. This it is. Soba, near. They're actually, soba and chikaku are very similar in their meaning. I'd actually say soba is more like around someone. Chikaku is not necessarily in the vicinity of someone. It's just like nearby. They basically have the same meaning, but they're just a slight nuance difference. Ue. Tsukue no ue ni arimasu, for example. Oh, I just said something I'm not supposed to say. Genki never covers the fact that you could say the exact same thing with ni arimasu as opposed to des. I wasn't going to cover this in this section, but I just said it by accident, so I might as well really quickly. You could also replace this with inu wa ie no mai ni imasu. Shashin wa tsukue no ue ni arimasu. That's fun. I had a little tidbit by accident. It is weird that Genki doesn't point that out because they are essentially identical. Does Genki really not point that out? Let's go ahead and see. Imas and arimas are strictly for descriptions of existence and location, while this is for a description of an attribute of a person or thing. They say, and then they go in to teach you des with a soko. No irony whatsoever. I mean, they're not wrong, right? This here is describing an attribute of McDonald's as being over there. The attribute of McDonald's is that it's over there, but you can actually describe its location with arimas or imas, not for McDonald's obviously, but for a person. And I don't think they bring that up anywhere. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Okay, whatever. These things are basically prefecture names, and Tokyo is in between these two prefectures, namely, going by what we just learned at Genki, an attribute of Tokyo is that it is between Kanagawa-ken and Ibaraki-ken. These sentences are using the location words along with verb sentences, right? So actions. So we have the same sentence as before, but it's an action. I'm glad I did this. So I took those location words that Genki taught, and instead of just describing those as attributes of the locations, I put them into sentences with verbs, which is honestly how you're going to see them very frequently. So it's a good thing I did this. Oshiko is to urinate for a dog. Also very helpful that I taught you that right here, isn't it? Oshiko shimasu. The dog pees. I could hear Yuki laughing in the background. Ama no ue de shashin wo torimasu. No. So I took a picture. The I is implied here. Torimashita. On top of the mountain, or just on the mountain. So one thing I didn't do here is I didn't really go through the purpose of the various particles that are being used here, and that might have been helpful for some people. If we look at the first sentence, we have inu wa. So the dog is the topic of the sentence, so about that dog. Ie no mae. So the no particle is helping us create a complex noun, and that complex noun here is in front of the house. Ie no mae. Then we have de, the de particle, which I like to generally teach as via or by means of. So in this case, if we think of via in front of the house, topic is the dog. What is the dog about to use the front of the house for? That's what that de is implying, that it's using the front of the house for something, and that is oshikko shimasu. So it pees in front of the house. Oshikko is pee. O is the object, urine, the object that is done. Shimasu. You might not notice that this is the past tense of the verb. We're covering that, I believe, in 2 sections from now. Bad Andy. Do it later. I still answer questions that people ask about these lessons, but unfortunately not really on YouTube because there's too many comment questions. But I do answer every question that anyone has about these videos on ToKiniAndy.com, so check that out if you're interested. If you use the ni particle with the location that something exists at, you can express it is outside, because the ni particle indicates a target location. I call it the target marker. The target of arimasu, to exist, is outside. Soto no doko ni arimasu ka? Right, so we have a complex noun, and that is soto no doko. So where outside? And that's the target of exists question. Like that's how Japanese people say or eto. I actually highly recommend making an effort to use that. I'll notice in recordings, some students will make an effort to use eto when they're thinking or when they're trying to when they're thinking, when they're trying to come up with a way to say what they're trying to say. Sometimes they'll just do it, they'll put it into their script to make it sound like they're thinking. And I think that's great practice because if you don't do it, you're going to naturally say whatever it is you say in your native language when you're pausing to think. The ums and the uhs and those, replacing those with the Japanese variants like ma or eto or ano, things like that. Making an effort to add those into your Japanese, like when you're speaking Japanese, I think is very useful for helping you sound more natural. The fun stuff in this lesson, the past tense of desu. This is useful. So, nice little fun. So was all the other stuff. The other stuff was useful too. Ame janakatta desu. Ooh, this is a fun one. It was not rainy. Literally, it was not rain. 隣の席は空きじゃなかったです. So I learned something new in this lesson too, guys. 空きじゃなかった means it wasn't empty. Or 空きでした. Yuki making her one of her first appearances into the stream. Should have just brought her on from now. Would mean it was empty. 安藤さんじゃなかったです. That wasn't Ando-san. So if we see someone on the street or maybe you... Really, it wasn't Ando-san because there's no that in there. まあ、ルーメイトでした. Okay. I combined mu and me there. Roommate, not roommate. That would be ru and then me immediately after that. You want to make sure the mu and the me are distinct. Roommate. I just called them godan verbs because like out of faith, I guess, but there's actually a good reason. And I'm going to do a video on it, but it would take a long time to explain it now. Just know that godan is a better way. I did do a video on it and it's a really good video. Check it out. It's over here. For the negative, masen deshita, for the past negative, and then mashita. So you really only need to learn those 2 rules for, irueru verbs and godan verbs. I didn't have much to add to my coverage of the polite past tense. I think I did well. I think it was a good explanation. And I rushed through it, but I think it was justified because I'd already covered it all in the previous lesson, and most people probably had that down. He drank beer right here, kokode. Desu yo? That's like, just so you know. No desu yo, it was just yo. But yo is like friendly new information. So it's new information for me who was asking. There's no beer left, or there was no beer left. So I probably went, looked, I came back. Biru ga arimasen deshita. I mean, I explained it fine. And it's fine. Really, I probably wouldn't use the past tense there. I'd say there isn't any beer. Biru ga nai. Biru ga arimasen. Because now there's none either. Not only was there not any when I went to look, there's still none. So I would just use the present tense most likely. Boku wa niku o tabemashita. But I also ate vegetables. So to say that, I would replace that o with mo and add yasai mo tabemashita. An interesting thing that a lot of people very frequently make a mistake with in this sentence, what a lot of people would do is they would say boku mo yasai wo tabemashita. So people would put the mo particle on the themselves. They put it on boku. The reason why that is wrong is that the mo must mark the thing that is also. I know that sounds weird, but basically if you were to say boku mo yasai o tabemashita, it would sound like I also. Someone else ate the vegetables and I also ate the vegetables. But what you're trying to say here is that I ate meat yesterday and I also ate vegetables. Vegetables also I ate is how you're basically saying that in Japanese. It has to be in that order. The particle always must mark the thing it modifies in Japanese. I'll also go, if we're thinking future tense here, I'll also go to Nagano. But we need that ni, because if we said Nagano mo iku, well, for starters, it just doesn't work. It's not correct. It's incorrect. I think it's because if you don't leave the ni there, which is the target marker, it marks the target of the movement here, which is the movement is iku, then Nagano might be the thing that's going somewhere. Grammatically, we don't know that it's not some person with the last name Nagano who is going somewhere. If we just say Nagano mo iku, it definitely sounds like a person with the last name Nagano is going somewhere as well. So you need to have that ni to mark it as the target location, and then you can add mo to that. So in the direction of Nagano as well, or to Nagano as well, I will go, is what that sort of would literally come out like. So it's one of the reasons you need to keep the ni there. Saiyaku. Seriously, I've translated that as. But what's important is you can't just read this as seriously. If we were to break it down using the kanji, we would have it's essentially the pinnacle of bad. Top of bad, using the kanji. It would not be 1時間に勉強しました. Boo boo. No particle. That's the takeaway from this part of the lesson. The interesting thing about this is that this is actually true for all counters. It would have been very useful to know about that here, but Genki doesn't mention it, and I didn't either. Maybe I wasn't thinking at the time about them as being counters, but really that's what they are. And it would be cool, Genki, if you're ever watching this, if you would mention that next time. As far as whether or not it's fu or pun or whatever for fun, these are things you just need to memorize. Shigoto wo. But you know what I've got for you guys? I've got a special treat. I've got a little song that you can use to memorize them. Okay, let's look at this. You're gonna enjoy it. So, I promise. Nifun uses the kanji 2 and segment and means 2 minutes. Ready? Let's take a quick look at the other minutes. First, let's look at the other numbers we've learned so far. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We already mentioned how chitsuki and ku often become a small tsu before hahifuhe and ho. And hahifuhe ho becomes papipupe or po. They also become papipupe or po when they follow n or ju, as in 10. The u in ju becomes a small tsu. So, can you guess when minute words become pun versus fun? Pause the video and try and guess. Then we'll go over it together. Okay, just pause the video. Try and guess. Ready?
Moments later.
3分、4分、5分、6分、7分、8分、9分、10分. I made a little mnemonic, or poem, that I think might help. By the way, this is true for bigger numbers like 28分, 18分 as well. 1, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10. I sure hope that you have a pen. 1, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10. Pooh looks like an alien. Bowling. Pooh does look like someone bowling. Take a look at that. An alien bowling. Sound like my grandmother. Okay. Anyway, back to the scheduled programming. Ma is like, well, he's funny, that guy. It's like a filler. 面白いですよ. Actions of quantity. This is going to be a fast one, but what you can know is that they're very similar in usage to frequency adverbs, which we covered in... The thing that is covered in this section is basically true of all adverbs. This should have just been a general section about adverbs. By the way, that's not my fault. That's Genki's. Sakana wo takusan tabemasu. So for this sentence, you could also say takusan sakana wo tabemasu. Either way is fine. What's important to mention here, though, is that the takusan, because it's an adverb, is modifying eat. So I eat a lot of fish. You could also modify fish directly with takusan no sakana, which would mean lots of fish, and then I eat. Takusan is actually a special adverb in that it's also a no adjective, so to speak. Genki never covers all these because it's a bit advanced, but takusan can actually directly modify nouns. You just have to use the no particle. And then you get a complex noun that means many fish. Takusan no sakana. Not all adverbs are no adjectives. So that is one special thing about takusan. But Genki didn't teach you that, so it didn't really deserve its own section. たくさん漫画を読みました. I read many comic books. Comic books, I read a lot. I know in English that sounds like I'm saying many comic books, but that's not what I'm saying. It just means I read a lot. I might have read the same comic book over and over and over again, and I could say this sentence because takusan is the adverb modifying read. That's the main thing I want you to get here. 昨日お母さんと電話で話しました. So I talked with my mother on the phone. We have not covered that usage of de yet. We didn't cover it, but it's the same de. Just means, de always means via. I utilize this thing to do another thing. In this case, I think the sentence was, denwa de, I utilized the phone to talk with my mom. It's a masculine sort of jock greeting. It means hello. Os, hey. But it needs a small tsu in there. That's why this is being extended. Osu. 本当にすみませんでした. I'm so sorry that this happened. So でした, すみませんでした is basically saying sorry for something that you did in the past or something that someone else did in the past in this case. The deshita probably didn't make sense here because Ando-san's still there. 本当にすみません. ごちそうさま. So like when you're leaving a restaurant or something, you say this to the chef. In English, we'd probably just translate this in this situation as thanks. Leaving the restaurant, you want to add des or deshita to the end though, just to be clear. 今日は誰と食べましたか? An example of an answer would be お母さんと食べました. Let me know who you ate with today. Same question. Let us know in the comments. お母さんと食べました. I also call Yuki's mom お母さん. Interestingly, I just added a little interesting point there. The reason you can refer to your partner's parents or even other people's parents as お母さん or お父さん, there's actually a different kanji that you use for it if you were to write it. Like a different kanji for another person's mom. It's known that they're not your mom. They're someone else's mom. But if you were to write that out, it would be a different kanji. Let's roll the Patreon credits. See you guys later. Bye-bye. All right. I don't think that lesson was bad. I think it was pretty good. There wasn't a whole lot for me to correct. The only thing that I would say, in the grand scheme of things, not necessarily like a critical mistake, but all the less a mistake, was my translations there of takusan plus a verb. I was basically translating them as if takusan had the no particle attached to it and the noun. Not really critical. It was a good one. I think it was a good lesson. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if you did down in the comments, and we'll see you in lesson 5. Thanks. Bye-bye.